Hello! This is Blade, a half-human, half-vampire. All his life, he has been suffering from a thirst for blood, which he quenches with special serums. But unlike his enemies, Blade is not afraid of sunlight. Using his superhuman and super vampiric powers, he will try to save the world from evil. 1967. A pregnant woman is admitted to the hospital with a neck wound. The doctors discovered her outside and think the poor girl was bitten by a wild animal. Suddenly, the girl goes into labor. She undergoes a C-section, and a healthy baby boy is born. The next scene shows a girl and a guy rushing in a car to a party. The action takes place years after what happened at the clinic.
It's a surprise, baby.
Yeah, I like surprises.
Instead of a nightclub, the couple arrives at a huge industrial freezer where they pass by hundreds of carcasses. Their journey ends at the far door, the entrance of which is guarded by a security man. The girl kisses the guy, and they are allowed inside. In the hall, the DJ is playing loud music. The crowd moves to the beat, and the newcomer quickly loses his date. And when he finds her, he receives a strong push from the girl dancing next to him. He does not understand what is going on. Everyone around him is staring him straight in the eyes, and a suspicious red liquid is dripping onto his palm from the ceiling. Suddenly, the fire sprinkler system activates and starts spraying real blood on the dance floor. The camera slides over the banner with the name of the event, Bloodbath. People are cheering, enjoying the show, and the guy tries to run away in fear, but falls to the sticky, wet floor. As he crawls to the exit, those around him shower him with heavy kicks. The poor guy's retreat ends when he runs into the heavy boots of Blade, who appears as if out of nowhere, right in front of him. The blood stops dripping from the ceiling, and the vampires start to realize that their party is not going according to plan. The vampire hunter proceeds to methodically exterminate the bloodsuckers. Shotguns, submachine guns, and stakes come into play. The vampires scatter in fear, and the guards are unable to stop or even slow down the hero. Eventually, one last, most desperate group of bloodsuckers tries to stop Blade. He slays them with his sword. Only their leader survives, whom the protagonist first stakes to the wall and then sets on fire. When the police arrive on the scene, they only discover a burning corpse and a frightened kid who did not manage to leave the bloodbath. Blade quietly leaves the improvised nightclub and disappears into the night.
Got a charred cadaver here for you.
The fried vampire is taken to the hospital. There, he is examined by doctors who begin an autopsy. The bloodsucker doesn't like this turn of events. He rises from the dead and first attacks the male nurse and then the female doctor. She has come to the autopsy to examine the oddities found in the blood of the admitted patient. The girl is unaware that they are dealing with an actual vampire. The doctor fails to escape from the assailant, and he bites her in the neck. Suddenly, Blade appears in the hospital corridor and chops off the vampire's arm. The bloodsucker decides to retreat and jumps out of the hospital window. The fall does him no harm, and the foul creature flees. Blade is about to finish off the infected victim when he suddenly remembers the pregnant girl who died at the beginning of the story. From his memories, it becomes clear that she was his mother. The hero puts down his gun, takes the wounded woman, and runs away. The police shoot after him. Together they ride to the secret hideout, where they meet Abraham Whistler, Blade's friend, mentor, and partner in the fight against vampires.
Bringing home straight now.
The old man thinks the girl should be finished off, because she may soon turn into a bloodsucker. Blade says he couldn't do it. On the name tag, Whistler reads the doctor's name, Karen Johnson. He says he's going to inject Karen with something that should slow down or prevent the transformation. Garlic. The procedure is quite painful. Meanwhile, the Council of Vampire Elders discusses what happened at the bloodbath party. The main bloodsucker says that it was all the doing of Blade, the vampire hunter, half-blood, and daywalker, as they call him. He summons Deacon Frost, a young and ambitious leader of one of the vampire gangs, to investigate the matter. They also call him a half-blood because the guy wasn't born a vampire, he was turned. Deacon is blamed for what happened and is reminded that bloodsuckers have been hiding in the shadows for centuries, and that's where they should stay to be safe. But Frost doesn't like hiding. He says he wants to take over the earth and turn all humans. Deacon believes he is part of the next stage of evolution, and with threats, the guy leaves the meeting. Meanwhile, Blade stops by his weapon supplier friend and buys a new garlic essence and a serum, a bloodlust suppressant.
Whistler says I'm building up a resistance to the serum.
At this time, Karen wakes up in the hideout and looks around. She has not turned into a vampire. When she reaches Blade's sword on the shelf, she almost loses her hand because the hilt of the weapon is protected by spikes against unauthorized use. Blade returns to the base. Karen overhears him talking to Whistler about her notebook and the notes in it. The old man thinks that the doctor is close to solving the mystery of how to cure vampirism. The conversation takes place as Blade is receiving a painful injection of highly concentrated serum. Karen is eventually spotted. She tries to run away, but Abraham and Blade catch up with her. There was no better moment to introduce themselves, so the pair take the opportunity and tell the doctor about who they are. The girl also learns the truth about vampires. It turns out that hunters follow them from town to town and exterminate them. At first, Karen doesn't believe them, but the memory of a burned body that didn't want to die in the hospital quickly brings her to her senses. Whistler shows her the weapons that help the duo fight bloodsuckers. It's silver, and Abraham's new invention, a powerful ultraviolet projector. The latter requires testing, and Blade eagerly agrees. Whistler believes that the bloodsuckers have remembered the woman, and now she will never live in peace. Nonetheless, a little later they let Karen go home. She is given a special vampire mace, a container of garlic essence, as a weapon. In the end, she is told that in case of a weird thirst, it's better to put a bullet in her head, because the alternative is even worse. Meanwhile, the vampire leader Gaetano Dragonetti finds Frost in the archives, where he is trying to decipher ancient vampire scrolls. Immediately, he slaps the guy in the face, since only purebloods, members of the House of Erebus, have access to the archives. Dragonetti tries to find out what Deacon is up to, but the latter is not eager to show his cards. Having achieved nothing, Dragonetti leaves the archive, where the computer continues to analyze old texts. Blade takes Karen home and warns her that she needs to stay alert. In the elevator, the girl notices matching tattoos on people's necks. Two of them follow her on her way to the apartment, but then disappear. Karen goes inside, and a few minutes later a policeman arrives, but acts suspiciously and threatens her. He gets a blast of garlic in his face, but that does nothing to him. It turns out that Karen is facing not a vampire, but only a minion waiting to be turned. This is brought to her attention by Blade, who entered after the man.
He's a familiar. A vampire wannabe.
After giving the cop a good beating, Blade points Karen to the tattoo on his neck, a sign of his allegiance to Deacon Frost. Downstairs, in the trunk of the police car, the pair find donor blood, confirming the vampire hunter's hunch. Having seized the moment while Karen is holding Blade's hand, the henchman cop escapes as the hero is hesitant to shoot in a crowded place. The man never told her where he was going. After a brief argument, Karen gets in the car with Blade and says that she's going with him. She also says that she will be safer with the hunter and that she plans to continue her search for a cure for vampirism. At night, the minion policeman returns to his car. The couple tail him, and he leads them to an exclusive club. It is a secret vampire crypt, with blood-sucking security on guard at its doors. After arming his friend with a pistol loaded with silver bullets, Blade storms into the foyer without much ado. Inside the club is another vampire rave, but this time all the guests are sitting at their tables, listening to a DJ and a couple of Asian singers. The cop shows up next to the bar, and Blade rushes after him, scattering the guards. He catches up with the enemy in the kitchen and trashes the surroundings while beating him. The hunter wants to know where the secret entrance is. Once again, it is located in the freezer. Apparently vampires have some sort of special attachment to them. Blade lets the lackey go, while he and Karen go down the passage and take the elevator to the archives, where Deacon was deciphering the vampire scrolls. While the pair search the data vault, the henchman returns to his master, Frost. There is a party going on at the bloodsucker's house, but its host does not take his eyes off the computer screen that is finishing processing the ancient records. The display shows a strange circular building, inside which people with some kind of markings must stand in a special order. But what exactly is going on in the video is a mystery. At this moment, the lackey comes to Deacon. He tells his master about Blade and his friend, whom the hunter basically used as bait. At first, Frost calmly listens, but then lunges at the guy with a sharp movement and drinks up all his blood. The policeman's body is sent swimming in the pool at the center of the room. The previously thoroughly fried vampire Wayne is also at the party. Ironically, he turns out to be Frost's right-hand man. Wayne's own hand was cut off by Blade in the hospital. Deacon orders his subordinate to capture the hunter alive. In the depths of the archive, foul smell leads Karen and Blade to a nasty archivist named Pearl, who looks suspiciously like Jabba the Hutt. When the pair approach him, he is in the middle of explaining to Frost the meaning of the scheme that he found. It turns out to be a secret ritual.
You will need 12 purebloods to make the ritual work.
Upon seeing Blade, Pearl passes gas in fear. He communicates with Deacon by video link and screams that he is about to be killed. But Frost does not particularly care, merely telling the archivist to try and die with dignity. Blade and Karen torture Pearl with the new ultraviolet lamp, extracting information about the ritual from him. The man's not particularly cooperative, so he gets a smooth and crispy crust on his pale skin from 2 charges. Pearl doesn't like being turned into a steak, so he betrays Frost and reveals why the man needs to decipher the ancient archives. It turns out that there is a way to awaken the blood god, La Magra. To do this, he needs to gather 12 born vampires and some other thing. Afterwards, Blade takes the disc with the data and continues his search through the archives. He leaves his friend to guard Pearl, instructing her, if the big guy moves, fry him. The hunter finds a closed door and decides to blow it up, despite the shouts of the archivist. Karen doesn't like shouting, so she blasts Pearl with an ultraviolet flashlight.
He moved.
At the end of the procedure, the bloodsucker is not feeling too well, but stays alive. The door explodes, and Blade and Karen enter the room with the original ancient scrolls. There, Blade gets into a trap when he tries to help a girl sitting on the floor. Suddenly, she starts kicking the vampire hunter and breaks one of the glass cases. Other bloodsuckers, led by Wayne, join the fight. However, the protagonist's luck runs out as he is tied to a column by the neck. Karen also gets caught by the ghouls. Wayne shows Blade his healing arm, which he has regenerated. Vampires have the ability to do so. One of the bloodsuckers takes the hunter's sword and immediately loses his hand. But the rest of the group isn't particularly frightened by the sight. They know that a new one will soon grow back. Wayne decides to restore justice and stabs Blade in the shoulders with a pair of silver stakes, just like the hunter did to him at the bloodbath party at the beginning of the movie, before the roasting. But the vampire's triumph quickly fades when it turns out that Blade had an earpiece with a microphone in his ear the whole time, which he used to maintain communication with Whistler. The old man bursts into the building on his 2 limp legs and shoots down almost all the guards with a machine gun.
Catch you f***ers at a bad time.
Seizing their moment, Blade and Karen run into the hole in the wall that Abraham has previously made. The trio enters the subway service tunnel, and Whistler throws a large explosive charge into the vampire vault. The explosion proves to be a powerful one, and occurs just as the vampire hunter and the team are cut off by a passing subway train. Whistler gets hit in the face with a flying spare part, and Blade and Karen jump into the tunnel as the train passes, during an epic brawl in the tunnel, with trains and angry vampires scurrying through it. Some of the ghouls are sent to their graves. Wayne loses his arm again, and counts the number of wagons of a moving train with his head, while Blade and Karen deftly escape the chase by hooking onto the last car of the passing train. There, the hunter injects himself with the serum and explains to his friend that he is not a vampire, but something else. The recounting of Blade's life story is continued in the hideout by Whistler. He also managed to escape from the tunnel. The old man says that he met a homeless Blade, who at the age of 13 was wandering the streets and drinking the blood of homeless people. Abraham almost killed him, mistaking him for a vampire, but then realized what he was. What happened was, the mother of the future hunter was bitten by a vampire while she was pregnant. Whistler says she died in childbirth, and the baby had a gene alteration. The end result is Blade, who is not afraid of sunlight or silver, but has vampire thirst and powers. Lately, the serum only briefly diminishes the hunter's craving for blood. Whistler himself has a reason for taking the path of a vampire killer. He tells Karen about how, in the past, his entire family was murdered by a vampire, whom he led into the house out of the goodness of his heart. Abraham believes that something big is about to happen in the world of bloodsuckers.
There's something happening in the vampire ranks. There's something big.
And Deacon Frost is behind it. Karen walks into Blade's room. She says she knows who he is. The hunter replies that the girl cannot know all about him and that he is not human. The new acquaintance tries to prove to the vampire fighter that it's not true. Blade confesses that, since the very start of his anti-vampire crusade, he has been looking for the monster that attacked his mother and made him this way. At Frost's house, Wayne tries to make excuses for his failure. For doing so, he is bitten right in the stump of his hand by Deacon's girlfriend. The boss, in turn, repeats to Wayne that he wants Blade alive. At dawn, a group of people bring a tied prisoner to the shore, where the sun is just beginning to rise. When they pull the sack from the victim's head, it turns out to be Dragonetti, the old boss of the vampire clan. Around him stands Frost and his gang. Deacon rips out the enemy's fangs with pliers, undresses him, and places him on his knees, facing east. In the rays of sunrise, the leader of the vampire clan first catches fire and then explodes into pieces. At that moment, Frost takes his girlfriend by the hand. At the next meeting of the elders, Deacon arrives with Dragonetti's fangs and seizes power. He says he is looking for 12 volunteers among the council. In the meantime, Blade and Whistler are talking at their base. The hunter shows his friend a piece of the scroll he managed to steal from the destroyed archive. He also hands the old man the disc with Frost's plan. Abraham promises to look into it.
Something about the blood god, the spirits of the 12.
Meanwhile, Karen brought her medical equipment and a new weapon against bloodsuckers she'd created. A liquid that makes vampires' blood boil. The microscope shatters during the testing of the chemical reaction. While Karen is taking Blade's blood for tests, he reveals to her that Whistler has cancer. The girl decides to examine her bite marks, and the old man catches her doing it. He states that Karen doesn't look well and will probably turn in a day or two. The girl asks him not to bury her yet. Blade goes to the city to get the serum, and on the way meets Deacon, who is wearing sunscreen because it's daytime, and leads a little Asian girl by the hand, holding her hostage. Frost has long wanted to meet the hero in person and tries to win him over to his side. He says people are simply cattle. They fear the hunter and consider him a beast. Vampires, on the other hand, are the superior race according to him. Blade quotes Deacon's ancient vampire scrolls and says that he's nothing to him. Deacon throws the girl on the driveway and runs away. Blade rescues the child from under the bus, but doesn't even hear a thank you in return. The frightened child quickly disappears into the crowd. While Blade is negotiating with Frost, Karen and Abraham are testing her cure for vampirism. The girl thinks her invention can help her and all those newly turned. She also wants to try and cure the hunter's thirst. Suddenly, their hideout is attacked. The pair manage to kill a few of the ghouls, but are still captured. When Blade returns home, he doesn't find Karen, only Whistler under a bloody sheet. Next to him lies a videotape. Abraham is still alive and says that Frost has taken their friend and is plotting a full-on vampire apocalypse, after which humans as a species will cease to exist. He figured this out from the deciphered disc. Blade turns out to be the key to La Magra's coming, which is why he wanted to take him alive. Whistler warns his friend against going to the ghoul's lair and asks him to shoot him so that he does not turn into a vampire. Blade resists at first, but then gives his loaded gun to the old man. At the sound of the shot, he leaves the production area and goes to his room. Afterwards, Blade watches the footage Frost left behind, in which he calls him to come to Edgewood Tower. Karen is held captive by the villains. The hunter casts himself silver bullets and stakes, loads the murderous liquid left by his friend into syringes, gets on his motorcycle, and rides off to face evil. Meanwhile, Deacon asks Karen about her relationship with Blade at his home.
Blade not giving it to you, maybe?
He gives her a choice, to be turned or to die. The girl replies that she is ready to be bitten. She will be cured later anyway. The bloodsucker doesn't believe her, but doesn't bite her either. She calls Frost infected, not a true member of a new species. Deacon is hurt by her words, and he breaks into a fervent speech about the imminent arrival of La Magra and the global vampire apocalypse, for which there will be no cure. Suddenly, someone enters the building. Frost is informed of this by his henchmen. The next scene is reminiscent of the battle in the marble foyer from the movie The Matrix. The bullets, the slow-mo, the chunks of tile, the intense gunfight, all present. Here though, Blade flies into the building on a motorcycle. In The Matrix, only Trinity did that. The guard's first attempt to stop the hunter fails, and he continues on his way to Frost. The latter, frightened, locks himself in the penthouse. On the upper floors, the hunter encounters 2 elite guards. He uses them to test his new injectable weapon from Karen. It works flawlessly, leaving only blood splatters behind. Blade continues his crusade and finds the White Room with a laptop. Over and over, it replays Frost's insidious plan to summon the Blood God. Suddenly, an elaborate bed appears in the corner of the room, in which lies Blade's mother, quite alive and well. She says she was bitten by Deacon and then given shelter. The stunned hunter is caught off guard by bloodsuckers. They mercilessly beat their adversary with electric batons and take him to the site of the ritual. Blade is driven there in the back of a truck along with Karen. On the way, she shares with the hunter that she is close to finding a cure for vampirism. But should it work, it will also take away all of his powers. The exhausted Blade and Karen are taken out of the truck and dragged to the place of the ritual under the blows of batons. The entire procession arrives in the hall, where the main action is about to take place. Deacon and Blade's mother look around the hall. In the process, they give the vampire killer a tour as well. Standing next to them are the vampire elders from the council. Blade is brought to his knees by Wayne's blow. The guy is thirsty and doesn't hear a word they say. Deacon disassembles the hunter's weapon, fiddles with the sword, but does not lose his hand since he knows its peculiarity now. He then finds vials of liquid that make the vampire's blood boil, but mistakes it for the serum and throws it into the far end of the hall. Karen is then dumped into a dungeon with a half-feral blind ghoul that looks more like a zombie.
Tell me, Karen, do you ever have second thoughts about us?
She recognizes him as her co-worker from the clinic, who was turned. He's awkwardly trying to settle some long-standing issues. The guy isn't very nimble, so he falls to the floor after just a couple of blows with a heavy bone. The girl leaves the basement safely and goes in search of the hunter. In the meantime, Blade is put into a huge construction resembling a juicer. His mother leads him there. Before parting, she tries to apologize to her son and calls him by his first name, Eric. Afterwards, she tells him with pleasure about the murder she committed and says she has long ceased to be human, having given in to the lust for blood. The woman closes the camera with a push of a button. The ceremony begins. The council members are arranged in a circle while blood flows out of Blade. It fills special cavities in the walls. Karen gets to Blade and frees him from the cell, but the ritual cannot be stopped. The hunter is weak and cannot get up, so Karen tells him to bite her. Blade refuses at first, but then realizes there is no other choice and sinks his fangs into her neck. While the vampire hunter is regaining his strength, blood begins to drip onto the foreheads of the ghouls standing in the Great Hall. Deacon gets to the center and receives the last drop. Lightning strikes the participants of the ritual. Blade's mother, seeing that her son is free, begins to attack him. Karen, meanwhile, tries to stop the ritual and pushes one of the guards off the cliff with a shotgun blast. At that moment, Eric finishes off his mother, and skeletal spirits fly out of the sacrificed vampires. They all find shelter inside Frost. Blade, furious, rushes to punish the newly made blood god.
Frost!
In the epic fight, Wayne is the first to get hit. That's how Eric gets his glasses back and begins to methodically exterminate all the henchmen. Meanwhile, Karen sprays Deacon's girlfriend with garlic essence, and her head explodes. Finally, Blade gets to Frost. The pair fight on swords, and at one point the hunter even cuts the mighty bloodsucker in half. But the vampire god's regeneration proves mightier than the notorious titanium of which the weapon is made. Blade then remembers about the vials with the potent concoction and launches his sword at them. It looks like the hunter is missed, but the opening hilt sends the vials straight into the hands of Blade, who thrusts several of them at La Magra's new coming. Against such substance, regeneration proves powerless, and the bloodsucker explodes. Blade and Karen go up to the roof and decide to fight evil together. The doctor promises to keep looking for a cure. Eric refuses to retire right away and asks his friend to help him prepare the serum. In the last scene, Blade finds himself in Moscow, where he fights another vampire. The movie made more than 3 times its budget at the box office alone. As for Deacon Frost, he turned out to be such a charismatic villain that it was planned to make a separate trilogy about him. In the end, the idea was abandoned, but instead it was Blade who received 2 sequels. The film, by the way, is set not just in a random city, but in New Orleans. Attentive viewers can learn this from the map of the region, which Eric holds in his hands during the scene of Karen and Whistler's first meeting. As always, look for the title of the movie in the video description. In the meantime, let us know in the comments. Who do you think is the most powerful vampire you've ever seen on screen? And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so that more awesome stories come out as often as possible.